Hey everyone, Egman here with another video. Today we've got a continuation of last week's top 20 cards from Colossal Warfare. I don't really have anything much more to say about this. The list really makes itself after this point. Like the top, 20 to 11 was a little bit sketchy of how I, wanted to choose these cards, but from here on out, they're pretty obvious. These cards deserve to be in the top 10. So let's start. Before we do, real quick, thanks to Espira once again for these new transition I've got. I think they look really slick, and let's get into it. To start off the list today, we've got Lord Slug, one of my favorite leaders of all time, honestly, and he's still like very viable even today. It's just like a really good mono green like hand control deck. And something I didn't mention last time, but I really should have, is that like for box toppers for this set, they have these super big leaders, which was awesome. I think it's a really cool addition for this, and just to have like some swag for your leaders, I think is really neat. Now we kind of have, I guess, stamped leaders, which I think is what probably makes a little bit more sense. And like these giant cards can be a little bit cumbersome at times, but man, this is super cool. Still a collector's item in my mind. But talking about this guy in general, active main once per turn, you can just choose one card in your life, add to your hand. This card gains critical for duration of the turn. So it kind of goes like positive in a lot of ways, because you take one. Self Awakening is already really good. But being able to take one card from your life and then also swing in and give, with critical, just means that either one, your opponent has to like discard a card from their hand to stop this 10k crit, or they have to just take the card and then they like lose a card from their life. So like you plus no matter what, which is nice. It's a draw 2 leader, which I think makes total sense for this card. And then on the backside, it's when this card attacks, draw 1, and active main once per turn, place 1 card from your hand in your drop area. Your opponent chooses 1 card from their hand and places it in the drop. So just super big hand control just by himself. And he's got like a lot of support, and they keep making more support for him, especially like when they made the 1-drop wings card a couple sets ago, and then also like the slug. What is it? Oh, I forgot the whole thing. Like, oh, the demon. Oh man, I'm blanking on here. You know the guy, the big 3-drop slug. Oh, I'm gonna. This is just gonna be a one-shot video, so I'm gonna 7 down the line. I'm gonna remember what they're called. But definitely a super cool card. I really like it, and I still think it's like viable right now. It got like, just because it's a green hand destruction leader, it has inherent support because they're printing out more hand destruction stuff. So really cool card. And let's move on to number 9. Next up, we have Intensifying Power Trunks. This card's just kind of crazy, especially when you pair it up with Chain Attack from last set. But what's it do? So it's just one of these like Kaba effects where, when this card attacks, you may choose 1 card in your life, add to your hand. If you do, it gains plus 10k power and critical for the turn. And so that, not only is this card already pretty good for itself, and also Red didn't need this at the time because they already had Kaba, so like another one of these 1-drop Self-Awakeners were kind of crazy. But the fact that it's also a Trunks GT, so you could play this turn 1 and then like keep it there, and then turn 2 you can go into Chain Attack into Zeno. Like just the fact that now that Chain Attack can come out for 1 less energy as long as you have this guy is completely insane, is really good. And so that's why he's number 9. We have like a bit of a like special mention to this newfound power Son Gohan, kind of the same thing but for green. Green kind of need this a little bit more, but both these cards are super duper good. I just gave the edge to Trunks just because he was a Chain Attack evolved target, which was really this just made like Chain Attack Trunks viable in so many ways. Like just the fact that you can make it for 3 energy instead of 2 or 4 energy is everything. That like you have to play like 1 more card to do so, but it doesn't really matter when you have to like you reset card advantage between both you and your opponent. It doesn't matter how many cards you had to do to get there, because you end up even anyways. So just a good card, very flexible in a lot of ways. People are still running this card. People are still running this Gohan too, especially since he is a Earthling Saiyan, and also he's a Son Gohan Youth, which will be important in Series 10 with the new like Goku leader as well, and that cool like new chain they have as well. So both these cards are good. This is the edge, but don't forget about this guy either. Next up, we have Beyond Darkness Demigra. This is like one of the best secret rares ever printed, and I still think it's always been viable, right? It's never like a bad card. I guess it's been a little bit power crept now because like Champa the Trickster can stop this card from going off, but man, is this a good card. And anything that was running black was just running this card easy, and which just made it was like super flexible. Any secret rare before this, as you guys have kind of seen, was really dependent on like a single archetype and that kind of stuff. We didn't really have like a generic one for just for a color before, and he he was fantastic. Like anyone who's running like kind of black cards, especially when we had like Dragon Balls as a thing, like this could be like a second, like a secret fourth wish in a lot of ways, just because you know, the Dark Overwhelm for 7 didn't mean anything when you were playing a wish leader. So it's just a super duper good card. 40k, triple strike, and all. If you don't remember, the auto, when this card attacks, your opponent reveals their hand, chooses up to 4 battle cards from it, and combo with them in your combo area. So not only do you have, like, you get rid of 4 cards in their hand, but you essentially, like this thing becomes almost impossible to kind of attack over. So, and this auto activates even if the attack is negated as well, so you can make them go like -5 for this swing. And he's Dark Overwhelm too, so he doesn't leave the field. So just a really good card. Any deck that's like running black can consider running this. Like even in Vegix right now, this could be a possible card that you run as your secret rare. So just a really solid card, and it's always been like that. And it's going to take a while for it to be like not at least a consideration for anything that's just running a lot of black cards. Next up, we have Successor of Hope, but before we do, I totally remember what they're called. They're called Agents of Destruction. So that Slug, Agent of Destruction, like a couple cards ago, that card made the Slug leader a lot better too. Anyways, going back to this guy, we got Successor of Hope, and if you haven't noticed, Bandai didn't really learn their lesson that Planet Vegeta was really good because it was a 1-drop, extra card that would be able to search a bunch of cards. That was really powerful. Everyone was using it. That's probably a bad idea. So let's just make a 0-drop search card, right? Isn't that like better? And oh boy, what a good card this was. For so many, like it just active main, choose up to 1 Goku lineage with an energy cost of 5 or less, and swap from your deck, add to your hand, then shuffle your deck. Like that's just absurdly good. It makes sure that you can find any, like if anyone was running like a swap engine, it was making sure that you can find like the next thing in your swap engine for free, which is fantastic. There's also like some swap, like there's some super combos with this as well, like the pans. So like this was like a free super combo, worst case, but just being able to have like the consistency to find your 1-drop. Or anything you wanted from this guy that was in the swap engine, which is really good. You couldn't find the Goten because it didn't have swap, even though it did have Goku's lineage, so you can go into it. This card was just super bonkers, and it was just like a free extra card. Like I don't really know. We don't have free extra cards anymore because like cards like this totally broke them, and like they should never have been printed in my mind. But man, what a good card. And I mean, like obviously Goku's lineage is not as powerful as it used to be thanks to some bans, but like if it ever comes back, like this is obviously a good card for that whole archetype. So I don't really have anything else to say. It's obviously just a really good card. Next up, we have the Hooter leader, and I also have him in big giant form, which means I can have like my big slug fight, and then they're so big leaders. All right, that was dumb, but yeah, this is such a good leader, and was a really good leader until essentially the yellow Broly promo kind of kicked it out of it, and also like a lot of the stuff it abused also got banned too. But just from pure value, this was one of the most value-based leaders that we had, and it was silly because it was supposed to be like really archetype intensive, but that's not what happened. So auto, when this card attacks a leader card, you may choose 1 battle card from your hand, place in your drop area. If you do, draw 2. So being able to like this kind of effect, you'll see kind of later, it has been more. It hasn't been just so generic. Like there are a lot of cards, like there's a Goku that you can discard a green card, then draw 2, and that kind of stuff. And it's kind of just been like off the wings of this guy, right? So. He's attacking leader card, which is kind of a little bit slower nowadays. Like you want to be able to attack battle cards with your leader cards, but just being able to draw 2 and cycle as much as he did is fantastic. And then also it's an untapped 2 leader, which was, this is about the time where untapped leaders were just like, they figured out that they're really good secretly. And then on the backside, the backside's super nuts as well. So when this card attacks, you draw 1. Then if you have 4 or more energy, your opponent chooses 1 card from their hand and place it in top of their deck. So like this goes like +2 every time you swing if you have 4 or more energy, which is just silly. It's just silly advantage wise, and it just made like so much sense to run this guy. He was blue, which is really good for reasons we'll see in a little bit. And then also he had like the best super combo in the game at the time too. He had the Hoi super combo. This little boy, he was able to the super combo just lets you combo with him, and he just card a card from your hand to draw 2. So it's kind of like what the Paragus is now, and like an original Helles as well. Like both those cards are just super good. Like this is the only leader who could use it, and luckily this leader is already really good. So any deck that was doing anything like aggressively, this was the leader for it, because he had like the Trunks combo that you could untap an energy whenever you swung with it, like or comboed with it. Like I don't know, he had just so much tools, or so many tools for him to be good. He gained so much advantage and could put so much pressure on your opponent that it's no wonder he did so well for as long as he did. And just a super good leader, and definitely the best leader that was released in this set. Next up, we've got Hayden Mastery Son Goku, and just looking at this smug little Goku, like just so many like almost bad memories of just how good this card was and how like invincible he was for such a long time. For like 6 months, this card was like untouchable in so many ways. Like once your opponent plays it, you can't do anything about it. Like once your opponent gets this out, they win the game, right? And some people don't even remember, like this card came out like so early, because the original idea for this card was that you'd swap into him on like 5 energy and then you just go from there. But then they released the Path to Greatness promo, which you could swap into it on turn 4, and also the card had barrier that you could get it out on turn 3 or earlier as well. It was just really silly. And like, originally they thought, my assumption is that, it took like sparking 7 and you had to have like 4 specific yellow energy, so it was kind of hard to get this guy out. But definitely not the case. So going into this guy was so good for so long. We didn't have any counterplays, we didn't have anything like that. So just the fact that he has deflect, so he can't get like Cold Bloodlust, or he couldn't get Crusher Ball, like the 2 good cards that could have interacted with this card anyways. But it also has Triple Strike and Dual Attack on a 35k, so this could deal 6 damage by itself. And then when you play this card with swap, choose up to a total of 3 of your opponent's battle cards are energy, ignoring barrier, and switch in the rest mode. So even if your opponent had like some negates to get rid of like the 2 attacks for this, then they'd have to at least have like a Dimension Magic or something. Like he could just be untouchable in so many ways. And then you could pair it up with like Shenron. Like Shenron was such a good leader with this because you could give it another like triple attack, so and plus 10k as well. So you could just get so many swings with this guy. And not only that, but it's an 8-drop Son Goku with Universe 7 on it, so you could just evolve Victory Strike into it, and then your opponent has to like one or done in it. And that's like obviously what a lot of people did. You could swap into it. Like the common play is that on turn 3 you get a Goku Path to Greatness on the board. Turn 4 you use 4 energy to swap into this. You awaken or you untap energy somehow. Like you could use like a Shenron leader to like untap an energy with one of their desires, something like that. And then you just play the Goku on it, and then you just swing in with an unnegatable attack. Shenron leaders are super good at making sure that your opponent wouldn't have to, like, your opponent has to self-awaken themselves, so you could, like, just do 8 damage all by itself. There's just so many ways, like, this card could come out and wreak havoc on your opponent, and it was just, like, the keystone for the format for, like, the first half of 2019. Very scary card. Luckily, we have some ways to interact with this card now. It's not just immediately, like, I hope you win early or you lose to this guy. It was I don't know if it's a bad format, and obviously I used Chile with this card as well, and was able to sneak some wins with it as well. But man, what a good card. I'm happy it's gone, because it just reminds me of just such an uninteractable kind of scenario. But what a cool card at the same time. For number 4, we have Mira, Creator Absorbed. What a mistake of a card. I'm gonna say it. I feel like this card was like misprinted in some capacity, and they just kept it that way. Like, I mean, obviously it was like literally misprinted, but so this is a 30k with deflect, which is already pretty good for overwhelm. For only 4 and 1 energy, you got a 30k, and then when this card attacks, it gains plus 5k power for each card in your warp. So even if you just had the 4, this became a 50k deflect that for 1 energy, right? That's just as silly, right? And this used to be a core of like one of the most like, I don't know, degenerate. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but with Bad-Ring Laser, Champa the one that gives double strike, and this guy for 3 energy, you could just guarantee almost that you do 2 damage as long as your opponent didn't have a blocker out, which blockers weren't a really big thing. So just such a good card. Even like this card paired with Bad-Ring Laser just meant like, oh, guess what? I'm guaranteed to do 1 damage to you. So that was the big thing about him. He also had like this union way to get him out with like a mirror chain, but it was really sucky when it first came out. And then they made some more cards, and like with the Toa archetype, like that actually made a lot of sense as well. And when you do play this card with union, your opponent chooses 3 cards from their hand and sends them to their warp, and this gains double strike for duration of the turn. So now you just have like an invincible like double striker that your opponent has to deal with. And like at this time, Battering's gone, so he's not as easy as a threat to kind of get rid of. But oh man, what a good card for such a long time. Always present in aggro decks, just like one or two of, just in case like you had to like beat over your opponent and like make sure they use all their negates and all that kind of stuff. Just a very aggressive card, and like you could just easily get this thing over like 100k without doing anything. Like just a 100k, like the super duper big beat stick. And it's just funny how that interaction was, and how it just pretty much stayed like this for forever, and they haven't. I don't know. I feel like it was some kind of mistake that this card was printed with the skills that it had, but man, what a good card at the same time. We are in the top 3, and we've got minus killzone, a banned card, and spoilers. The other 2 cards are banned too, and the reason minus killzone is at number 3 currently is because it was banned the latest. It had the most like shelf life, but personally, if I was to rank on like power, like strictly today, minus killzone I think is the most powerful card, and only because there are just so much more counterplays stuff going on. Like this card was banned at about a year ago in 2019, right before set 7 came out, and that was because they introduced a bunch of new counterplay mechanics. Because before we had set 7, before we had like multi counters, before we had like a lot of like preemptive strikes, before we had Denial of Hope, all we really had was like Crusher Ball and Cold Bloodlust. Like no joke, those are like the only 2 cards we had for that kind of stuff. So minus killzone kind of made sense at the time. But just it's a 0, like it's a cantrip, right? Like you for 0 energy, you send 3 cards from your drop area to your warp, which wasn't a really big thing at the time. Draw 1, and then your opponent can't activate counterplay skills for duration of the turn. So it just gave literally all your cards deflect more or less, and it was just such a silly thing. Like it can't activate counterplay, which is better than deflect in the sense of like Champa the Trickster. They can't even play it. Like the Champa the Trickster gets around deflect because counterplay plays the Champa, and then the auto is what actually does it, and then he also gets around barrier. So like Champa the Trickster can get it, hit everything, right? But this guy, minus killzone just stops them from playing the counterplay at all. They can't do anything like that. And so this card had to get banned for this. If this card was around today, this would be like a staple 4 of every deck. There's so many more counterplays going on, especially with like the new unison counterplays as well, that you could just play them for free. Like minus killzone would just be such a good counter that, and like this card just doesn't make sense. Even if this was just a 0 cost that just said, send 3 cards from your drop area, and your opponent may not activate counterplays for the duration of the turn, people would play this no problem. It doesn't even have to get the draw 1, but like this still has like this draw 1 that is fantastic. It only goes like minus 2 cards into your drop area, which is fine. And even now, there's cards that like you want to get into your warp too, so it's just a bonkers card. I'm happy it's banned. At the time, can you imagine like how weird it was like a year and a half ago? Like this card was just fine. Like some people were running it wasn't a big deal, and only like side decks against decks that you knew played Cold Bloodlust. But man, this would be broken, super broken right now. And my goodness, am I happy it's gone. For number 2, we've got Bartok the Progenitor. What a good card. I don't even want to talk about it that much. Like this card was so good. Like this activated so many decks, and just okay, the biggest thing that this thing could do is that this was a big self-awaken target, right? Even if this card was just for self-awakening, even if this didn't have a swap, even if this just said like auto, when you play this card, choose 1 card of your life, add it to your hand, at the end of your turn put this card back in your hand, people would still play this. And I mean the swap, the way that they made the swap mechanic, that you can swap for nothing, which I think was the wrong ruling looking back at it. Like that's what kind of enabled this Bartok to be so good. At least like took it up to like another level. But like not only was this card just stupid good by itself, being able to self-awaken on like indefinitely, being able to just keep getting card advantage with him, being able to just pressure opponent, because this is a 10k always, right? Just being able to just say, and all unawakened leaders are 10ks or less. So just being able to like play this card, take a card from your life, swing into your leader, or swing into their leader, and then they either take it or they lose a life, or so they drop a card to combo out of it, and then you can just put it back in your hand. Like, worst case, you just put it back in your hand for free, so you can play it again next turn and have protection. Or you can go into like a Scrambling Assault Goten, which is also a stupid broken card that is at 10k, but when you swing with it, it also gains advantage. You look at top 3 of your deck, and you're able to like find the best card from there, and you're not like self-awakening either, so like that's good. You guys, if you were around a year ago, you know how good this card was, and like not only was it just for aggressive, but for like even mid-range and combos, right? So for like swap engines, you play this, you go into a 2-drop with like barrier or something with it. The 2-drop goes into Path to Greatness, and then that goes into like Hayden Mastery, right? Like that was like almost untouchable for the longest time. It was really annoying to deal with. Your opponent really had to like either aggro you down or just, by some miracle live, I guess. Like make sure they have like enough like flying nimbuses, because if you went first and you had like 4 energy, you could go into Height of Mastery and then you could just tap out your opponent who only had 3 energy at the time, and they'd have to make sure like they could still like untap by awakening or something. It was just a mess. It was a mess of a card. This card was so good. It was so aggressive, and then also like I don't know. Every time this, like, as long as this card was around, it was in a top 1 deck, right? Like, if not, like, top 0 deck. It was in Storm for the longest time, and then it was in, like, Swap into, like, the Height of Mastery Victory Stripe Swap for a long time, and then it was in Super Shenron as well. Like, this was just a troublesome card. It didn't last a year. I'm surprised it lasted for more than 6 months, and it's just a crazy good card. And, yeah, I don't have anything else to say about it. It's just good, and it needs to be banned. And for number 1, we've got the legendary Flute. Who could have seen this coming? It is, as much as I didn't want to talk about how broken Bartok is, I really don't want to talk about how broken this card is. It is just insane how much value this card was. First of all, it's 0 cost, right? And it replaces itself, so like you always like, it's never like dead of a card. And if you don't remember what this card does, if you blocked it out or went around, if your leader card is blue, which is such an easy restriction, especially when you have hooter running around. You also have SS3 running around. Like, this card with SS3 was dumb. But choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards with any cost of 3 or less, return it to its owner's hand. If that card was your own battle card, draw 1, which is just, I don't even know why they had this extra part. It's just dumb. But so like you're thinking, getting cards back to your hand, that's negative advantage. Why would that be good? So, but then you think about how in Dragon Ball, where Dragon Ball is really weird, because most of the times you don't want to bounce cards back into your opponent's hand, because then they can just use their auto when you play this card. Like most cards that are good because they have an auto when you play this card, right? And additionally, most of the time most of the cards you have that at least don't have barrier, that kind of stuff, you swing at them, right? And so they're worth more back in your hand than they are tapped out on your field most of the time anyway. So like if you use Legendary Flute on your opponent's card, you bounce it back to their hand and now they can combo with it. Otherwise they would not be able to, so you just gave them like more cards. But bouncing your own cards is kind of falls under the same thing. Like you can use Legendary Flute, get like a card in rest mode, you can get back to your hand for free combo power, and then you also just draw 1 for it too. So you like get +2 from this card. It's just dumb. And like a really common play you could do is that you could play like Bartok. You could swap into a Gotenks, and then after that you use after you swing with Gotenks, you use like a bean when you swing with it, so you untap an energy, and then you use Legendary Flute to get the Gotenks back into your hand, and you can just play Bartok again, and then you can use Bartok into Gotenks, or not Gotenks, Goten. Sorry, Scrambling Assault Goten. Just go back into Goten, and you swing again, and every one of those cards you play drew you 1. Bartok got 1 card for your life. Goten got a card from the top 3 from your deck, and then Legendary Flute returned the Goten back to your hand and let you draw 1 card again. And like the Bartok went back to your hand when you swapped with it too. It's just like you can see how this kind of got out of control, and all these cards came at the same time, and I can't believe like they didn't test that. It was just so aggressive, and you could have like 4 Sensu Beans, and then you also had 4 Unyielding Trunks, which meant you just had 8 untapped cards. And you could find them really easily because your keeps like looking at the top 3 of your deck. Like you could just win the game with 2 energy, and you just keep twisting the same blue energy yellow energy back and forth just to make sure you had it, and you just swing and you're using an attack with like 10 or 15k every time. It's just flashbacks. What a good card. They put it down to 1 for a while, which is wild, and then they eventually just banned it outright, which was the right call in so many ways. Just a really good card. Like even worse, like you could still like use it to like bounce like a blocker if your opponent had one of those too. Like it was so hard to play around this card, and it just made the the format so aggressive in so many ways, and just made like blue leader so good. Like even like the Trunks future leader from like set 2 was good because of this Kai. And I don't know, there's nothing else I want to say about this card. It's banned. It's good that it's banned, and it's just even if they would have just limited to Hooter, it would have been fantastic, because most people are running Hooter with these cards anyways. So why even restrict it to that? But all right, I'm done being almost actually angry about talking about this card. So these are the top 10. These should be like pretty obvious. If there's any mess ups, it's probably between like 10 and 6. So let me know what I got wrong there. But yeah, this is such an explosive set. And it's followed by World Martial Arts Tournament, which is like one of the least explosive sets we got. But we also have the Ultimate Box to kind of spice things up as well. And then maybe, I don't even know what I'm doing next week. Maybe I'll actually do like a top 10 for the Series 10 coming out. But that's going to be it for me. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.